You're never going to guess what time it is right now. On October 25th, 2022, Montero Lamar Hill, popularly known by his stage name Lil Nas X, posted 2 photoshopped images of himself throwing a JPEG of Van Gogh's sunflowers at a print of soup by Andy Warhol. The meme received hundreds of thousands of likes, way more than my own tweet on the subject, and that's fine because I think these images are absolutely incredible. They're the best. However, they're also very political, and now I have to talk about that for a while. Returning to the initial text, we see the 2 activists, Phoebe Plummer and Anna Holland, remove black coats to reveal the Just Stop Oil shirts that they're wearing underneath. Each throws a can of tomato soup onto Van Gogh's sunflowers. There's like a whole bunch of orange. It kind of looks a little violent, not gonna, like blood. It drips down the frame, but the activists still need to assign their act with explicit meaning. They get low to the ground to prepare for that second act, gluing their hands to the wall, which has been done pretty often in these sort of art-based protests. We can hear a man yelling, then calling security in a very concerned, questioning voice because, he's not expecting to see the youths throw tomato soup out of Van Gogh. I understand. Well, the man yells, both activists struggle with the glue, and then Holland picks up a soup can, and Phoebe Plummer begins a speech.
What is worth more, art or life? Is it worth more than food? Worth more than justice? Are you more concerned about the protection of a painting or the protection of our planet and people? The cost of living crisis is part of the cost of oil crisis. Fuel is unaffordable to millions of cold, hungry families. They can't even afford to heat a tin of soup. Meanwhile, crops are failing. Millions of people are dying in monsoons, wildfires, and severe drought. We cannot afford new oil and gas. It is going to take everything we know and love.
So this video is very well done. The camera doesn't falter, and the activists are coming and doing exactly what they came to do as quickly and as stylistically as possible. The soup can used as a prop effectively adds to their messaging too. It creates the meme. And although Holland's own statement is cut off by the end of the video, the words the public hears from Plummer, if they even stopped to hear them at all, were still very, very impactful. Except we're here right now, so a lot of people did not stop to hear those words. The meme, the piece of culture that stuck with this whole ordeal, was the fact that someone had the audacity to throw a can of tomato soup at Vincent van Gogh's sunflowers. Everyone in Worst Tumblr had some totally original thought about the stunt, and through some of my mutuals who were still attending a small liberal arts college at the time, I noticed a couple of themes emerging. Theme 1, you got a camp that goes, wow, that's a cool little protest strategy that got international coverage and attention, and that little clip clearly defined who the group was and what they were for, and yeah, I'm down for the cause. Camp 2 goes, well, that's shit. To be fair, Camp 2 does have a little bit more variety in it politically. There are the people who are just the effects of climate change don't matter, and now radicals are trying to destroy the last real works of art we have left unscathed by neo-Marxist anarcho-communism. And then there are those at my past liberal arts college who, for better and for worse, thought the activists could have spent their time doing something else and felt like taking any action against such a piece of art was unappreciated at best, unethical at worst, unhelpful either case. It's an alright thought process, but it also feels like something that is very rooted in the armchair debates that people tend to have at these institutions perched up on hills. They're wonderful places to think and to learn and be, but they can also very easily become politically one-noted. I do think their politics are pretty good still, so I'm going to address the armchair radicals' concerns. Any amount of time on any Just Stop Oil page quickly reveals that the organization does do a whole lot more than throw soup at unsuspecting paintings to protest against government support of fossil fuel infrastructure. Just Stop Oil protests in a lot of different ways, like destroying gas pumps and gluing themselves to petrol stations, or disrupting traffic with slow marches. And also, the point of protest is to disrupt and to get people to look and listen at whatever you're doing. And Just Stop Oil did disrupt effectively. especially, they had a reason why they were targeting museums. Like, oil companies have sponsored a lot of museums in Britain. And yeah, the National Gallery cut ties with BP Oil months before this soupening. But if the stunt took place at, say, the British Museum, who only cut ties with BP this June, I would argue that it would have been a little less effective. Partially because Sunflowers is a really good painting, and Sunflowers is not at that museum. Also, Just Stop Oil doesn't care about museums. They care about the government's inaction on climate change and challenging the priorities each of us hold when it comes to the climate crisis, shedding light on how integral oil is to all of our lives. Their actions are disruptive and difficult for a reason. That is the point of protest. It's this type of action we see in popular mainstream environmentalists like Andrew Malm and Greta Thunberg accept as vital and necessary steps for government action against climate change. Our government is not going to listen to us. Our systems, our governments, our kings aren't built for listening, and we must make them listen. It's so much easier to criticize all sorts of movements when you aren't a part of them. But when push comes to shove, I really do agree with Just Stop Oil. Like, human life and safety is worth more than any work of art. Except these works of art. But that's different because Marina knows what she's doing. Also, as a side note, for those who wouldn't fathom ever destroying an iconic piece of art for political protest, neither would Phoebe Plummer.
I would like to make one thing perfectly clear. We did no damage to the painting whatsoever. I was in court yesterday, heard that there's been minimal damage done to the frame, which is repairable and replaceable, and absolutely no damage done to the painting. It was behind glass, and we never ever would have considered doing it if we didn't know that it was behind glass and that we wouldn't do any damage. I mean, literally, we were sat there still glued to the wall. They wiped it off with a bit of kitchen roll.
Now, we've gotten to the point in the video where I feel a little lost in the soup, so let's check up on that meme real quick. It's so good. It's so damn good. I love it so much. This is a video about it, and I've spent hours writing this video. Now I'm on the floor, and I don't know. After this, I'm going to make baked oats. But for right now, I'm on the floor, and I'm talking about this meme. Anyways, so it turns out I do not know how to make baked oats. But now we're in the past future, and it's time to talk about the fraught nature of protest and breaking things. Right now, I live in rhubarb country, the land of the free, America, and I'm told that I have the freedom of speech, which includes a whole lot of cool stuff, like freedom of protest. I'm also given a whole lot of rules about how to protest, both in my nation's laws and national history. Like, any protest movement that has made a difference in how our world functions today included some sort of disruption, usually manifesting in the destruction of property or consistent marches or demonstrations, often all three. And while protests will likely continue to be legal in my country, there are a whole lot of actions that have been deemed illegal. Yes, you can gather, but you can't take up the streets. Yes, you can protest, but you can't leave school without government repercussions. Yes, you can protest, but you need a permit. Yes, you can protest, but there will be a curfew. Yes, you can protest, but there will be police forces ready to arrest you under the pretense of rioting. Yes, you can protest, as long as you don't want to change anything. I could go on about specific legislation related to the miners' strikes and to newer laws targeting slow marches and other direct action strategies, but that would all just lead to the same point. Being disruptive is an arrestable offense. If you break any rules, you're going to be arrested, and maybe you'll be charged too, but the main point isn't to put you in prison, it's to put you in jail. The point is to confront the political protest and pick away at it until there are not enough people to actively disrupt anything. So, if you're already likely going to be arrested anyways, why wouldn't you take the extra steps to make sure your message is being heard? Why not throw tea into the harbor? You don't care about this government-approved protest, you care about disruption. And if you're already going to be arrested anyways, why not create the most useful disruption possible? Why not throw soup at a painting? I think now is a good point to officially say that I am not personally advocating for any destruction of property, but I do have sympathy for those who choose to do so for just social causes. Nobody's listening, especially not now with our attention split between 20 different things at once. So yeah, I understand throwing soup on a painting in a desperate attempt to get people to listen. You've been arrested for less flashy stunts. This is a book by Andreas Malm that explores the destruction of property and our current reliance on respectability politics in the environmental justice movement. I'm not going to say its title, But as a sophomore in college, I found a ton of value in this book. I knew about destruction of property as political action, of course, but I never considered breaking things as a means of direct action in environmental justice movements, which is also the point where activist Madeline Fitch begins her critique of this book. Destruction and disruption of property as direct action has been a thing for as long as the United States has been a colonial project. Fitch is a member of Earth First, and she takes a pretty critical approach against this sort of ultra-organized action that has become most visible in many political movements, especially in environmental efforts. These more visible organizations get bogged up in theory and bureaucracy and everything else that becomes necessary and yet less effective for larger, less flexible, centralized organizations. One of these organizations would never throw soup on a painting because such a suggestion would lead to time wasted in the same away from keyboard discussions people had on Twitter after Just Stop Oil just went out. They had a couple of people go out, they threw soup on a painting, a couple of people got arrested, and then they moved on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, because the people who protest, who are part of these grassroots, less centralized groups, aren't looking to join some organization. They're looking to create change. They have something to fight for. And yeah, maybe the organization is part of that, but it's not their main focus. As Fitch writes, I asked one indigenous frontliner why they continue to fight pipelines even though we lose more often than we win. They answer my question with a question. What does losing mean? They asked. Is it failing to stop the pipeline, or is it failing to fight back with everything we've got? If the consequences of losing are unacceptable, then fighting is your only option. I'm only here because my ancestors fought back. Did they win? If they'd won, then the United States wouldn't be here. But if they hadn't fought back, I wouldn't be here, and neither would my children. As indigenous people, we have the same responsibility to the land. We are the land. There is no option of not fighting back. You will find no fatalism here. What you will find is humility. A big reason why I've only come to further appreciate the actions of Just Stop Oil in the past year is because they know exactly what they're fighting for with no sense of doubt, and they know what they're doing. They act against fatalism. They act swiftly and often despite rarely attracting positive attention, and they do not let their nations forget. We cannot afford new oil and gas. It is going to take away everything we know and love. As celebrity chef and environmentalist Hugh Fernley-Winningstall puts it, every radical movement for change needs a radical wing. And as Fitch argues, that radical wing should be the thing which informs our theory, not the other way around. Our discussions should be based in Just Stop Oil and indigenous activists and frontliners instead of theory that people came up with sitting in armchairs. That's the thesis. Back to the soup. Just as Fitch has their critiques of Malm and Just Stop Oil also have critiques of each other, and I think each just kind of falls a little bit short. While Malm advocates for the destruction and disruption of oil pipelines, making good arguments for each, he also disagrees with direct action in the public sphere to an extent. And while Just Stop Oil does engage in non-destructive vandalism and protests in the public sphere, one of its founders, environmental activist Roger Hallam, is against the destruction of property, going as far as to say in a documentary that destroying any property is the same as violence. While Just Stop Oil's methods are just meant to prick the conscience. Essentially, Malm wants to disrupt companies, cost them money, make oil increasingly obsolete through breaking things, and Hallam wants an informed, angry, non-fatalist population to bring about change in a little less radical, more formal way. Show people the state has laws not to protect people, but corporate and state interests, and maybe you'll get sweeping change at the next election, or maybe you'll just get people reading Malm a little bit more intently. A successful movement does not exist with just one strategy. There are those who work through the current political systems to enact laws and protections through a politic of responsibility. There are those who go out to the front lines and remain disruptive, and there are those who make sure a movement's message makes it to the masses, so we know exactly what they are fighting for and why it is worth everything. In this centuries-long international environmental movement, this fight is worth everything. And if we think for a second that the future of our planet isn't everything, we will lose everything we know and love. Protesters will continue trying more and more novel tactics because either the planet or protest will become more disruptive before things finally get better. But people are working so hard from so many different angles and backgrounds to make things better. And I know I likely wouldn't feel the same if I weren't in the country that I live in now, but I have hope that we will build a better future despite those who are desperately trying to sneak their coin purses into hell. More and more people, including the most famous environmental protester of the 21st century, Greta Thunberg, are engaging in protests not centered around laws, but centered around morality and change. Thunberg has been arrested twice this year. Phoebe Plummer was arrested in a coffee shop back in June, but neither will stop when the only other options include relative failure in an uninterested, crippling government bureaucracy or climate fatalism. The only other option is giving up. Our kings will not listen. So together, through direct action, through protests, through TV spots, through threats to their power, through disruption, we will make them listen. It's meme time. Shit's fire. Okay, so we discussed the initial act, how it set itself up for virality, which now gives us time to understand this, which is the whole point of all of this. Even devoid of any previously covered context, this work could just act as a critique of Warhol's postmodern brand-based artwork, which is lovely. We have a modernist who was famously dismissed at the time he was creating, one could say, impressionist artwork, compared to an artist who is absolutely iconic for his time for his explicit representations of instantly recognizable popular brands and figures, celebrities. Like, this could just be a fun little art history meme, but then it acts as a critique on how we discuss the Just Stop Oil vandalism. Everyone knew the purpose of the protest, but at the end of the day, instead of having conversations about climate concerns and additional actions we could and should take on grassroots levels to address this crisis, we got on Twitter and we didn't do anything. All of our discourses just ended up being about soup and Van Gogh. We got lost in the sauce and we didn't even realize that there was a pizza there. Hill explores this expertly by removing any mention of Just Stop Oil in the environment entirely by reacting to the discourse instead of the initial event. The discourse is what this image is memeing. Not Just Stop Oil, not political action, just people on Twitter debating on what to think of this action and falling short of the broader discussions of protests and effective ways social movements have enacted change in the past and can hopefully enact similar change in the present. If you want more about like how we can imagine a better future, this is not the video for it. I don't have enough time, but Sophie from Mars, this is a good video. Otherwise, books, Andreas Malm wrote some pretty great stuff, and his critics have written better stuff too. Like, read a book. I got lost in the soup for a sec. I'm sorry. Do I think Mr. Hill was explicitly thinking about all this when he posted this image? Yes, absolutely I do. To continue this meme about discourse reading, let's take a look back at how many paintings are featured in this image. It's not 2, it's 4, but we're only asked to see 2. Our realm of imagination is limited to Just Stop Oil, and that's it. Either Just Stop Oil did a good thing or Just Stop Oil did a bad thing, and we have to get to the bottom of this because it's Twitter, but there are other groups protesting for the climate and other movements and struggles that require our care and attention and imagination too. It's a sick meme, and I really like it. And yeah, no protest action is going to be perfect, and there is definitely such a thing as poor political action, but this isn't that, I don't think. In a world where it remains hard to believe our governments will soon take the actions necessary to keep our world and our communities safe, I think it's fine that a couple of young people threw soup on a frame. The group Last Generation in Italy has since thrown more soup at another Van Gogh, which garnered similar but less global of a response, because Sunflowers is a better picture. Painting. But I promise this is relevant. So the cultural minister, Giordano, Italian name that I'm not going to try and pronounce, came out after this stunt and said that art should be defended and protected and not used as a megaphone for other forms of protest. And after that, my thoughts were solidified. Like, I really like art, but I also believe that there are some things that we need to put above art, like the safety and health of our communities and planet. And also, like, this Van Gogh is fine, but like, it's not Sunflowers. It's not Starry Night. Like, I guess it's what Italy has. Just Stop Oil has a crucial message, no matter if you think throwing soup on a painting is a good form of protest or not. No one in the future is going to care about any Van Goghs unless we actively work towards imagining and building a world where profits do not carry more value than people. And when I'm not on Twitter, I do see this happening everywhere. Maybe not as fast as others and I would like to happen. Global warming caused by countries like the one that I live in will continue to lead to the suffering and displacement of those outside of my country. But there is still the possibility and hope and willingness to fight for our communities and to create a future beyond catastrophe. And that's great. Radical movements need radical action. Actions that are harder to defend, harder to understand, harder to support. They're necessary. And the fact that some of those actions focus on our relationship to art in conversation with the well-being of our environment in this larger environmental justice movement across our planet, I think that's pretty cool. That being said, if anyone throws anything at a wall drawing, I will